Radical Russ, your red state refugee here, and I just got to take a moment to rant about this possible upcoming rematch between Donald Trump and Joe Biden for the presidency of the United States in 2024 and ask the simple question, how is this even close? I come to this via a new poll from the Wall Street Journal that asked about the two candidates and some certain questions about their personal qualities. And although the candidates are only 3 years apart, according to the journal, 73% of voters said they feel Biden is too old to seek a second term, and only 47% of voters said the same of 77-year-old Donald Trump. Even two-thirds of Democrats said Biden was too old to run again. And by an 11-point margin, more voters see Trump rather than Biden as having a record of accomplishments as a president. 40% said Biden had a record of accomplishments compared to 51% for Trump. And by an 8-point margin, more voters said Trump has a vision for the future. A vision for the future! And by 10 points, more described Trump as mentally up for the presidency. 46% said that was true of Trump compared to 36% for Biden. And I just got to know, where were these people from 2016 through 2020? Were they not paying attention? Too old to run for president. Joe Biden, an 80-year-old man, 81-year-old man. This guy's the same age as my dad, and he's out riding bicycles all the time. I guarantee you are not getting my dad's ass on a bicycle. Meanwhile, you got Donald Trump, this guy, Mr. 6'3", 215, Captain Hamburger, the guy who's always about 3 seconds away from stroking out due to the massive buildup of plaque and cholesterol in his arteries. You got to be kidding me. And is mentally up for the job. Really, we're talking about this guy, the guy who stared into eclipse, Mr. Covfefe, Mr. Hamburgers, the guy who can't spell stolen or indicted and actually has a need to know how to spell those words, cares about people like you. More people thought that just by a slight margin, Donald Trump cares about people like you, Mr. Name on the airplane, Mr. Gold Toilet, Mr. Third Supermodel Wife. You think that guy cares about you, not Mr. Working Class Scranton Joe Biden. Right. At least on the subject of honesty, people gave Joe Biden better marks than Donald Trump. But come on, this one shouldn't even be as close as it is. According to the Washington Post, they fact-checked Donald Trump for his entire presidency. During his first 100 days, there were 492 questionable claims made. On November 2nd alone, the day before the 2020 vote, he made 503 false or misleading claims on the run-up to the election. This is the story of Donald Trump. By the end of his presidency, in 4 years, he had told 30,573 lies, about 21 lies per day. Has a vision for the future. Well, I guess in a sense you got to give credit here because Donald Trump indeed has a vision for the future. It's a dystopian white Christian nationalist hellscape with the bones of the American democratic experiment littered throughout the land and cops given free rein to treat those criminals badly, I think Donald Trump said. Yeah, that's a vision for the future, all right. Just not one I want to live in. And this question about has a strong record of accomplishments as president is probably the most confounding one for me. It's as if people weren't paying attention at all to what Donald Trump promised and what he failed to deliver. I mean, did you end up getting that wall? Then Mexico was going to pay for it? No, that never happened. How about Infrastructure Week? Did that ever happen? No Infrastructure Week. Oh, I know he was going to repeal and replace Obamacare, bring something better in just a couple weeks, right? No, that never happened. The coronavirus, when he showed up, yeah, it'll be gone in just a couple weeks, right? Nope, we got about 1 million people died from that. Economic growth would be coming in at 4% per year, he promised us. Nope, that sure didn't happen. $4,000 pay raise we'd all get from his tax cuts for his rich buddies. No, I didn't see that trickle down, did you? Elimination of the deficit? No, hell no. He blew about 60% higher deficit than when he got into office. He said he was going to bring down prescription drug prices for us. That never happened. We saw EpiPens go up to $400 and insulin go way through the roof for people. How about the 6 weeks of maternity leave that he promised to all pregnant women in the workplace? Nope, we didn't see that happen. He said he'd bring an end to the opioid epidemic. No, we saw opioid overdoses continue to increase throughout his term. He got us out of the Iran nuclear deal, said he'd negotiate a better one. That never happened. Got us out of the Paris Climate Accord, said he'd negotiate a better deal. That never happened. Said he'd get the troops out of Afghanistan, and that never happened. And of course, the number one thing he promised throughout the campaign, he would lock up Hillary Clinton. And despite winning the presidency and having control of the Department of Justice and having the Congress in his pocket for the first 2 years of his term, Hillary Clinton still roams free. Now, let's compare that to what Joe Biden has managed to accomplish in just 2 years of his presidency. That wall, well, there's no wall up, but the border crossings are down 70% since May. Infrastructure, hey, we passed the infrastructure bill, and there's actually boots on the ground and shovels in the dirt currently making those projects happen all around the country. That, of course, Republicans are trying to take credit for, even though they all voted against it. We still have Obamacare in place, and the Biden administration has announced all sorts of rural health care grants that are going to bring health care coverage to 5 million people in rural areas that are largely red state Trump counties. You're welcome. Free COVID tests being distributed through the United States Postal Service. Coronavirus still exists, but at least the Biden administration is trying to help us do something about it. Economic growth, well, in 2021, GDP growth was 5.7%, and Biden continues to grow the economy. In fact, produced the most jobs ever in 2 years of a presidency. More jobs in 2 years of Biden than in 4 years of any other president, Democrat or Republican. Bringing down prescription drug prices. Not only did insulin get capped at $35 a month, but now the Biden administration is negotiating through Medicare on 10 other prescription drugs, a lot of diabetes drugs like Farxiga and Jardiance for people. The maternity leave, well, not so much Biden can do about that through legislation. That's up to Congress. But through his executive actions, he's managed to get 12 weeks of paid maternity leave and paternity leave to our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Coast Guardsmen, Marines, and space cadets. I don't know what we call them in the Space Force. We've got the opioid epidemic is still happening, but the Biden administration has pledged $450 million to help combat that. He would rejoin the Iran nuclear deal if Iran will come back to the table under the same conditions. He has rejoined the Paris Climate Accords on day one of his administration. And while it didn't go very well, there were some problems with the withdrawal. He did make good on the promise to get our troops out of Afghanistan and lock him up. Well, we'll see what Jack Smith has to say about that. I'm also glad to see that on the question of who is a more likable person, Joe Biden came out on top, because after all, when you're a guy who mocks reporters with a disability, hangs out with Jeffrey Epstein, tells Billy Bush you can grab woman by the pussy because you're a star and they let you do it, pushes NATO leaders out of the way, pals up to Saudi dictators who brutally dismembered Jamal Khashoggi, and let's not forget his creepy fascination with his daughter. I don't know if the media is just trying to artificially manufacture some sort of conflict here, or trying to make it seem close between Biden and Trump just to keep the ratings up before we get to the 2024 election. But folks, anybody with two eyes who's been paying attention for the past decade or so should recognize that regardless of what you think about their politics, Joe Biden is just a better human being than Donald Trump. Shouldn't you want a good human being in the Oval Office? I'm Radical Russ, and that's the rant.